Rhetoric.
Rhetoric. Speech or writing that is intended to influence people, but that is not completely honest or sincere. For example, the rhetoric of political slogans.
Risk. To put something valuable or important in a dangerous situation, in which it could be lost or damaged. For example, he risked his life to save her.
Route.
Route. A way that you follow to get from one place to another. For example, which is the best route to take?
Rubbish. Things that you throw away because you no longer want or need them. For example, a rubbish bag bin.
Rumor. A piece of information, or a story, that people talk about, but that may not be true. For example, to start spread a rumor.
Sacrifice. The fact of giving up something important or valuable to you in order to get or do something that seems more important, something that you give up in this way. For example, the makers of the product assured us that there had been no sacrifice of quality. Sacrifice. The fact of giving up something important or valuable to you in order to get or do something that seems more important, something that you give up in this way. For example, the makers of the product assured us that there had been no sacrifice of quality.
Saint.
Saint. A person that the Christian Church recognizes as being very holy, because of the way they have lived or died. For example, Saint John.
Satisfied.
Satisfied. Pleased because you have achieved something or because something that you wanted to happen has happened. For example, a satisfied customer. Skeptical. Having doubts that a claim or statement is true, or that something will happen. For example, she looked highly skeptical. Secret. Known about by only a few people, kept hidden from others. For example, secret information meetings or talks.
Set. A group of similar things that belong together in some way. For example, a set of 6 chairs. Set. A group of similar things that belong together in some way. For example, a set of 6 chairs. Settlement. An official agreement that ends an argument between 2 people or groups. For example, to negotiate a peace settlement.
Sharp. Having a fine edge or point, especially of something that can cut or make a hole in something. For example, a sharp knife. Shatter. To suddenly break into small pieces, to make something suddenly break into small pieces. For example, shatter into something. Shed. To get rid of something that is no longer wanted. For example, the factory is shedding a large number of jobs.
Shirt.
Shirt. A piece of clothing worn on the upper part of the body, made of light cloth, with sleeves and usually with a collar and buttons down the front. For example, to wear a shirt.
Shocking.
Shocking. That offends or upsets people, that is morally wrong. For example, shocking behavior.
Shoe. One of a pair of objects usually made of leather or plastic that you wear on your feet. For example, a pair of shoes.
Shortage. A situation when there is not enough of the people or things that are needed. For example, food/housing/water shortages.
Shrink. To become smaller, especially when washed in water that is too hot, to make clothes, cloth, etc. smaller in this way. For example, my sweater shrank in the wash.
Significance. The importance of something, especially when this has an effect on what happens in the future. For example, a decision of major political significance.
Significantly.
Significantly. In a way that is large or important enough to have an effect on something or to be noticed. For example, significantly higher, lower, larger, smaller. Sketch. A simple picture that is drawn quickly and does not have many details. For example, the artist is making sketches for his next painting.
Slope. To be at an angle so that it is higher at one end than the other. For example, a sloping roof. Smart. Looking clean and neat, well dressed in fashionable and/or formal clothes. For example, I have to be smart for work.
Soak. To put something in liquid for a time so that it becomes completely wet, to become completely wet in this way. For example, soak something in something.
Solid. Hard, not in the form of a liquid or gas. For example, the planet Jupiter may have no solid surface at all.
Somehow. In a way that is not known or certain. For example, we must stop him from seeing her somehow.
Something.
Something. A thing that is not known or mentioned by name. For example, we stopped for something to eat.
Sometime. At a time that you do not know exactly or has not yet been decided. For example, I saw him sometime last summer.
Somewhere.
Somewhere. In, at, or to a place that you do not know or do not mention by name. For example, I read somewhere that she refuses to do interviews.
Somewhere.
Somewhere. In, at, or to a place that you do not know or do not mention by name. For example, I read somewhere that she refuses to do interviews.
Sound. Sensible, that you can rely on and that will probably give good results. For example, he's a person of very sound judgment.
Source.
Source. A place, person, or thing that you get something from. For example, renewable energy sources.
South. In or towards the south. For example, South Wales.
Span. To last all through a period of time or to cover the whole of it. For example, his acting career spanned 55 years.
Speech. A formal talk that a person gives to an audience. For example, several people made speeches at the wedding.
Spread.
Spread. To affect or make something affect, be known by, or be used by more and more people. For example, the news had spread and was causing great excitement.
Square. Having 4 straight equal sides and 4 angles of 90 degrees. For example, a square room.
Standard.
Standard. Average or normal rather than having special or unusual features. For example, the standard rate of tax equals paid by everyone.
Statement. Something that you say or write that gives information or an opinion. For example, are the following statements true or false?
Step. One of a series of things that you do in order to achieve something. For example, we are taking steps to prevent pollution.
Sticky. Made of or covered in a substance that sticks to things that touch it. For example, sticky fingers covered in jam.
Stock. A supply of goods that is available for sale in a shop. For example, we have a fast turnover of stock.
Stone.
Stone. A hard solid mineral substance that is found in the ground, often used for building. For example, most of the houses are built of stone.
Stranger. A person that you do not know. For example, there was a complete stranger sitting at my desk. String. Long, thin material used for tying things together, made of several threads that have been twisted together, a piece of string used to fasten or pull something or keep something in place. For example, a piece or length ball of string.
Stuff. To fill a space or container tightly with something. For example, stuff A with B.
Suburb. An area where people live that is outside the center of a city. For example, a suburb of London.
Succeed.
Succeed. To achieve something that you have been trying to do or get, to have the result or effect that was intended. For example, our plan succeeded.
Success.
Success. The fact that you have achieved something that you want and have been trying to do or get. For example, the company has achieved considerable success in this market.
Successful.
Successful. Achieving your aims or what was intended. For example, the experiment was entirely successful.
Successfully.
Successfully. In a way that achieves your aims or what was intended. For example, she had already successfully completed these courses.
Succession. A number of people, or things that follow each other in time or order. For example, a succession of visitors. Suit. A set of clothes made of the same cloth, including a jacket and trousers or a skirt. For example, she was wearing a grey business suit.
Summary.
Summary. A short statement that gives only the main points of something, not the details. For example, a new summary.
Supplement.
Supplement. To add something to something in order to improve it or make it more complete. For example, supplement something with something. Supply. An amount of something that is provided or available to be used. For example, advances in agriculture increased the food supply.